English translation, 300th contact. Monday, 10th April 2001, 0709 hours.
Unfortunately, I had to wake you from your sleep, even though you had only gone to bed 3 hours before. But since I have to leave again this morning to do my job, it is necessary that I come to you so early.
I think I already know what it is. You said that you would personally try to observe the things of the General Assembly.
You are not wrong, because that is what it is about, and I want the matter done before I am gone.
I understand. For my part, however, I have kept to everything that we both discussed, and also with regard to the fact that I still withheld the conversation report from the 2nd of March, as you requested.
You are not to blame for anything. You have fulfilled what you were asked to do. But there are other things to complain about.
I think I know. In fact, according to your remarks, I have presented everything to the group members and explained everything, sometimes even a bit loudly.
I know that. Exactly, this is what I have to say, namely about the statements of the group members. I am outraged, shocked, and shaken that various group members still have such negative forms of judging others. Evaluations, which in reality are equivalent to condemnations, and which testify to the fact that despite studying the teaching of the Spirit, also known as creation energy teaching, etc., various group members have not yet made any progress in their self-education and consequently do not see and correct their own problems and mistakes, but only those of their neighbors who complain about them. And further, in this regard, it is very regrettable and objectionable. It is indecent and undignified to condemn other humans for any reason, as was done by various group members, and extremely thoughtlessly, not even realizing their inadequacy and condemnatory values of their words, believing that they had done nothing so negative and detrimental to dignity, even though they did so. So they are not even aware of the unworthiness of their statements and cannot understand that they made extremely negative statements. They obviously lack the necessary logic to recognize and understand this fact. Therefore, they believe that it is very appropriate to be able to have unworthy thoughts about fellow human beings, not realizing, however, that such thoughts already give the nod to indecency and virtuelessness, for in fact, it begins with negating thoughts and feelings when fellow human beings are discriminated against and condemned. The thought alone is already wrong and sufficient to cause injustice. So I am therefore outraged by the nature of Andreas's statements. Even if he finds them to be right and of the wrong opinion that his arguments were deliberate, which they were truthful in no wise, but only found an orientation in stubbornly and without hesitation and consideration to enforce something that has no justification for enforcement. In fact, he should effectively be more earnest in the exercise of his office and the facts connected therewith than in engaging in personal opinions and trying to assert them. It is his duty to remain neutral in all cases and to exercise his office in this form. And if I, for my part, advise the group members on decisions, then this should not simply be negated by him, because I am more than 700 years older than he, and therefore have much more experience in all things than he could collect in his previous life or can collect in the remaining years of life. This also applies to all other group members, including Stefan, whose rather stupid remarks regarding the fact that Atlantis should be granted a privilege give me a lot to think about and cause trouble, as in the case of Andreas and some other group members. It is simply unbelievable how certain group members today still behave and selfishly diminish the dignity of their fellow human beings and interfere in their private affairs without being able to judge them in truth, even in small parts. Therefore, it would be appropriate in any case if they would try to solve their own problems and mistakes. For as yet, the core group members cannot in any wise be said to be an elite that would be above such things. Unfortunately, in various group members, we have once again been wrong about these matters, which is extremely regrettable not only for us, but also for them. And it must also be said that there is no right for any core group member to interfere in the provisions of others, not even with regard to when a designated member wants to be included in the core groups, as is the case with Atlantis, for example. Nor can we give our advice on such matters through you, which should then really be taken into account. However, this only goes on as long as you stay here. Afterwards, the group members have to decide for themselves in every form. And until then, when the time comes, the right behavior must be learned by each individual. But this means that the necessary self-education, as well as the correct recognition and understanding of all things, must be followed, so that as few mistakes and inconsistencies, as well as unjustified condemnations of humans as possible, do not appear any more or as little as possible, and that such unworthy and outrageous occurrences can no longer be given, as was the case at the meeting last Saturday. Everything was really extremely unworthy and self-opinionated, whereby the mistaken ones consciously or unconsciously wanted to position themselves better than they really are. A widespread evil in the terrestrial human being, which should, however, have long since been remedied in the core group members, as should the hatefulness and the like, which still prevail among individual group members, and for which little or no effort is made to resolve it. Everything is so unfortunate, unfavorable, and shameful and undignified.
That is clear.
That is how it has to be, even if it does not suit the wrongdoers. The truth always sounds loud and hard.
Who are you telling, man? Oh, man. But can we get off this subject now? I still have 2 or 3 questions.
So be it.
Good, thank you. The first question is about the book you mentioned, which I am going to make with my articles from the Wassermann site, Figu periodical. Should it be made by Piero or Bernadette, or maybe by Christina or Andrea?
Andrea should be very inexperienced to produce such a work. Bernadette and Christina, on the other hand, are sufficiently burdened with other works. So I would like to say that Piero should do this work, as well as the one with the newspaper and magazine article book.
Then a somewhat tricky question, which I unfortunately could not answer. Does dying in sleep also lead to dying experiences?
This is possible, but not the absolute rule.
And what is it like before dying, just before the state of agony occurs, so to speak, in the waking state, with full consciousness?
This is not the case, because in the waking state, no dying or near-death events can occur. The question is completely unintelligent, and I wonder why you can bring it up at all. That does not suit you at all, because you have never asked stupid questions before.
Pardon, the question is not mine either. I only passed it on to you because I needed your answer as a specialist. I also thought myself that the question was stupid. Then another question in reference to Lucrezia Borgia. According to your information, I wrote in the spiritual letter number 8 that she had sexual relations and other degenerations with her father, Pope Alexander VI.
That is true, but you failed to explain that the Pope forced his daughter to sexual acts and other degenerations and raped her again and again. When she was released from his clutches, she led a very decent and civilized life. However, the life that she is said to have led, which was later said to be excessive, is based on a pure, slanderous invention of a scorned lover named Marinus Pergolesi and her father, Pope Alexander VI. Lucrezia Borgia was born in Rome on 18th.4. 1480 and died in Ferrara on 24.6. Ptaah 19.
And why did the Pope slander his daughter?
Because she no longer gave herself to him sexually.
Then one last question, which refers to Gabriele Vitek. You once told me that all her so-called revelations, etc., were invented and offered by herself, and that not a single word of everything corresponded to the truth. The woman presents herself as a self-proclaimed prophetess, also as a self-proclaimed medium of the sect Universal Life, and also as a mouthpiece of God, as did Erica Bertschinger, alias Uriella. According to your statements, I made a corresponding remark in Bulletin number 25, on page 21, as a result of which I once again received a harnessed complaint, this time from France, from a man who obviously had something to do with this woman and who told him various things about his and his wife's life. What is this about?
What I explained to you corresponds to the truth. Not a word of what Gabriele Vitek tells as a medium, etc., has any origin other than her own. She has no contact with any beings except her own, which means that she actually creates and invents the whole in herself, and then imposes it as divine wisdom and love on her believers and other followers. But an alleged alien also plays a certain role here, who for the chosen ones of the sect Universal Life is supposed to be, so to speak, a savior in need by one day, probably at the end of the world, since this is also an end-time sect, saving the chosen cult members with a spaceship. And since the woman possesses a good psychological ability, as is characteristic of practically all sect heads, by which they astonish their believers and other followers again and again, combined with a certain knowledge of human nature, it is easy for her to eavesdrop on her followers without them noticing it. Consequently, she makes all sorts of combinatorial assumptions about her followers, etc., which are often correct. The latter then naturally fall for it and believe everything, so that the woman can do more than others, and that she is actually in contact and connection with higher beings.
We call being able to do more than others being able to eat more than bread. Here, Hans-Georg Lanzendorfer faxed me this internet excerpt, as I have just seen. I asked him during the night watch if he could find something for me on the internet about Gabriele Vitek.
May I read it?
Of course, here please.
Thank you. The whole thing is realistic and therefore revealing. You should add this to our conversation.
That is what I will do.
Good. But now, my friend, I must turn to my other duties. Farewell, Salome.
Take care. Salome and greetings to everyone.
Subsequent explanation.
With regard to the question of whether or not dying in sleep also results in dying experiences, the answer was that such experiences are only given when a state of agony appears in sleep. Agony means to lie in the death struggle, whereby the struggle is related to freeing oneself from life in order to surrender to death.